Alright, so let's go ahead and check the rest of the icons right here, the rest of the tools. Now we're not going to go into all of the tools that we have here, as we said before. We're going to go into only what is actually applicable in our workflow. We have here the move, marquee, and selection. What these are, as we said before, but now we're going to go a bit into some details. The move tool actually moves anything in the viewport, right? So what if I want to move, like for example this piece right here? I can go to the marquee, which is M on the keyboard, and mark it up, and then V to go for the move tool and move it from here to there. Now as you can notice here, we are actually moving within the layer itself. We're not moving in multiple layers. So what if I want to move it in a different layer? Now I can actually click Ctrl J. That would duplicate it. See, it goes into a completely different layer, and it's on its own, so we can actually move it and we keep the previous one. Now the marquee has multiple options. We have the elliptical marquee, the single row marquee. We're not going to go into all of them, but generally it just changes the way the selection tool looks. Now we can see that we can actually add. You see on the marker right here, you can see the plus sign. It says here that you are adding. This is actually affected by these stuff. This is just a selection. So as you saw right there, it cancelled out the previous selection. Any selection I make cancels out the previous selection. This one is additive, which means whatever I do, it gets added. This one is subtractive. Whatever I do, gets subtracted from it. And this one is actually the intersection. So basically, if I do this, it will only take the intersection between these. Now this tool right here is actually the random selection. It's Lasso tool, Polygon Lasso tool, and Magnetic Lasso tool. You have the normal Lasso tool, which is this one. You actually mark up your selection like that. Whatever you sketch, you can actually mark it up. The Polygonal Lasso tool, you click, and there you go, get polygons. Magnetic Lasso tool is completely different. Wherever you go close to it, near, you see, you go close to the line or something, you're touching it, and somehow it actually reads it automatically. So this is very useful. You see right there, it's a bit sensitive to these things, so it actually reads this curvature and drops it for you. Whenever you actually let go and double click, it will do this to you. It will actually create the selection based on wherever you've touched before. Now this is the one tool. As we said before, you can actually pick the colors from it. Now I'm gonna go roughly into some of these stuff. I'm gonna skip some of them, and then I'm gonna try to give you a little exercise to show you how we're gonna actually apply all of these tools into our workflow. Now this one is a crop, which means you can actually just select this. For example, I want this. The crop tool is quite basic, just like any other software. You can just crop whatever you want out of it. This is a eyedrop, just like any other software. You can just pick the color from the screen. This we're gonna skip it. There's no need for it right now. Some of these tools, you need to understand that Photoshop is actually built for multiple aspects, like painters, for many professions, architects, concept designers, these kind of stuff. So some of the tools you're gonna see here are not actually for us. Like for example, this healing tool is generally used by people who are doing touch-ups for facials. They actually remove like some random dots on the face and stuff like that, you know, for portraits. So some of these stuff are not actually for us, so we're gonna focus only on the stuff that are for us. The brush tool is quite important. It's actually just to draw with it. I'm gonna show you how we're gonna apply this soon. You have the eraser, of course. You can erase stuff with it. And of course, now we're not on the proper layer. You can actually, you see, delete from this layer. There you go, it works fine. You have the Smudge Tool, which is a bit weird, but you can use it in some of the cases. Like, you see, you're smudging this image. Let's undo, Alt Control and Z to undo. You have a sponge. You have the pen tool. Pen tool is quite useful. Now, for example, if I have the brush tool and I want to make a curve that is very sharp, it's really hard to do it with the mouse. You see, it's fine, but it's not great. So the pen tool is actually useful for these kind of stuff. You can mark up your beginning, your end, and then you can right click, stroke path, and select the brush. You say okay, there you go. Now you hit escape twice to remove the line, and you can see that this is the shape that we got, which is quite sharp. Now what if I want to make it a curvature? You can actually click and drag. You see, it gives you a Bezier corner. You can click and drag, that gives you another one, and then click and drag, that gives you another one. Now again, you can go on stroke path with the brush, and gives it to you. As you may notice, the stroke is actually based on the settings of the brush. So for example, if I want to have the stroke a bit bigger, you can actually make the brush size bigger. See? Now if I go to a pen and I do something a bit cleaner than what I've just done over there, the same shape, a bit cleaner, then you go for stroke path, brush, there you go, same size, same color. You have the text tool, which is this, that's T shortcut. You can type with it just like any other software. You have the selection or mark, you know, this is actually just to click and select whatever layer you want. Sometimes you don't get to pick the proper layer. Sometimes you want to select multiple things. It's not a useful feature. And then you have the gradient. Sorry, that's the rectangle. That's my bad. That's the rectangle shape creation tools. It creates multiple layers, rectangle, and you can go for multiple stuff like this. That's actually the gradient. You see, it's quite a similar sign. The gradient, actually you need to create a new layer and then click from one end. For example, where's the mouse? There you go. You can just click here to there and create a gradient for you. Now this is the general concept of what we have right there, but I'm gonna show you now how are we gonna apply it. Now we have an image such as this one. This is actually drawn by hand, and you can see that this is generally the look that we're gonna get out of the software that you're using. You know, this is something you've done in hand, so you want to do something similar in actually Photoshop. You know, Photoshop is quite easy. It's not really a hard software, especially if you're trying to achieve something similar to this. Let's go for some random stuff first. I'm going to show you first on this image, then we're going to go to our actual image and try to replicate it here. Now we're gonna, while we are doing this, we're gonna actually go into some of the more advanced features in Photoshop, and we're gonna see how it goes. One of the stuff that we're gonna do is, first of all, we're gonna organize this area. We're gonna start by creating a new layer. We're gonna call this tree. This is quite simple. Now, the creation of a tree in Photoshop, you don't really need to create your own trees. You know, you can generally get them out of you know, on the internet. You can get random trees and stuff like that. You can do whatever you want with it, but we're not going to be limited by this, because everyone has his own style, you know, in artistic style in his representation. So he might need to, you know, show that off in his own design, in his own drawings. For example, this drawing was drawn quite you know, quite well, but you can see that he marked up the edges. He made them a bit darker to separate this from that. That's his own style. the artist his own style, you know. Same thing here. He created some colors, some shades. The shape of the tree is actually something he chose, that he wants this kind of shape. Same thing with leaving some gaps here and there. That's his own artistic style. So we want to try to achieve something similar to this in Photoshop also. But we're going to show you in both ways. One of them is actually getting something online, which is quite realistic. The other one is getting something artistic online. And the third one is actually creating your own image.